Record.
So hello and welcome to another um, teaching on the weapons of our spiritual tool chest in that series. I am Zakiya Monique, Master Relationship Strategist, Transformational Speaker, Bestselling Author, Killer Connections, and the facilitator of the Sunday School Remix. If you have not joined us in the safe space, I hope you will do so or consider doing so. You can join us at www.zmsafespace.com. It is a place where you can come, you can heal, you can grow, you can laugh, love, lament, all of those things. And so today we're talking about humility, and this is not a popular topic because I believe that it is misunderstood. Um, Unfortunately, we think, in this world today, it's such a dog eat dog world that we tend to think that the humble are those that are destroyed. But that is not true, okay, according to the Bible. It is not true according to God, his word. It is not true, right? But we tend to think that humility is not meek, it's truly weak. And that's the problem. And so many people stray away from humility, and they would probably gasp at seeing humility as a weapon, because they would think, how is something that means quote unquote weakness, and it doesn't mean weakness, but how is something that the world has portrayed to be weakness or a weak trait, how could that be a weapon? And so that's what we're going to answer today, that it is in fact a weapon. Okay, and I'll show you how, if you just be patient enough to listen and understand the breakdown of the scriptures. And so our main scriptures are 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7, and Proverbs 22 and 4. Let me read those because I do like to at least okay. 1 Peter, likewise, ye younger, submit yourselves unto the elder. Yea, all of you be subject to one another and be clothed with humility. For God resisteth the proud and giveth grace to the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. We don't like to hear that. We don't want to hear submit ourselves to the elders. And don't get me wrong. God, again, wisdom, because I know some old fools. Okay. I mean, I'm just being honest. I know some old fools. So God tells us to use wisdom now. He told us to watch as well as pray when we talked about wisdom. So he told us to watch as well as pray. So he's not telling us to submit ourselves to ungodly counsel. He's not telling us to submit ourselves to somebody that's bitter and negative and don't have a bitter word in them and ain't living a bitter word. He's saying, submit yourself to the elders that are filled with his wisdom and his counsel, right? But the young folk nowadays don't want to submit themselves to the elders. They don't even want to obey their parents. And the first commandment with promise was to honor thy mother and thy father, and thy days will be long in the land that God giveth thee, that the Lord giveth thee. And so if we don't even, many people don't even want to submit themselves to their parents, they're not going to submit themselves to any other elders. And this is how we miss out on so much wisdom and so many experiences that we don't have to go through ourselves. Like, I truly believe that, for me, I'll talk about me, in going through the things that I went through with relationships and just in things in life, finances even, I instructed my daughter so that she didn't have to go through them, right? I filed bankruptcy when I was in my 20s. And so I here's my thing. My thing was I did, I did my very best. I'll put it this way. I did my very best to live openly before my daughter and to just explain to her, hey, here's how you avoid that. Now, if you do not listen, then you don't get that free lesson. I don't believe that God intends for us to go through everything. Sometimes he will allow us to, a front row seat so that we don't go through some things, so that some things will pass us. But if we don't listen to the elders and the people who have gone before us, who are representing God and who are in the midst of wisdom and who have, and let me be honest, sometimes God will use the people that don't have wisdom. He uses whom he pleases. So that's why we have to try the spirit to see if it's of God. But what I'm talking about is following. So if we following somebody, I'm not following that. Oh no, God is not going to instruct us to follow somebody that does not does not, in terms of, implementing things in our lives, but he will have us to sometimes sit up under a person and tell us what not to do and things of that nature. So, all I'm saying is I just want us to understand that when it comes to elders, there's something to learn, whether it's good or bad. It's something to learn whether it's good or bad. We automatically discount people because of how they looked or because they don't have this much money or whatever. And so we automatically discount them. I believe that you can learn from anybody, even if it means learning what not to do. And because I've always had that mindset, there are a lot of things that I have avoided. Now some things I didn't quite catch. You know what I'm saying? But it's a lot of foolishness that I avoided simply because I listened to a person who looked less than, but that person really did have a lot of knowledge, but they didn't look like it. Like, because what does knowledge look like? What does wisdom look like? You know what I'm saying? In terms of a visual appearance. Like sometimes you just gonna miss the mark if you judge the book by its cover. You got to open up them covers, right? So ultimately, we got to understand that there is something amazing that God does when he gives us parents, when he gives us grandparents, when he gives us people who have gone before us, because they can say, don't go that way, go this way. Don't do this, don't do that, go do that. My grandmother, they used to always say that. My grandmother would say, if I were you, I wouldn't go there. And listen, I know this to be true. My grandmother used to tell me not to go to this certain playground. She used to, it was two playgrounds. My brother who lived in the projects. And so it was two playgrounds in the project. It was one that had all the broke up stuff on it. Everything was broke up the slide. We had one of those merry-go-rounds. The merry-go-round was all, messed up. You had to have two people riding in order for it to be right. So it was just jacked up. Swings all broke up. Everything was old, And then they made a newer one, but the newer one had sand. It had sand all over it, except one part. And the problem was there were some kids that, had tetanus. And those kids had played in that sand. So everybody who played in that sand caught tetanus, right? So my grandmother told me, do not go to, she said, if I were you, I would not go to that, don't go over there to that one with that sand. Go to the other one. But I didn't want to go to the other one because that other one had all the broke up stuff on it. So what's the point of me going over here? Because I'm the only child. I'm the only one at grandma's house. So I don't have nobody else to ride the merry-go-round with me so I can at least twirl on that. So I was just really like, grandma, okay. So I went outside, and guess where I went? I went to the new one. I went to the new one with the sand. I didn't go in the sand though. See, I was a smart kid, right? I called myself being smart. My grandma had told me don't go there, but I went there anyway. And I went to that one, and I decided I wasn't gonna go on the sand part, so I wouldn't get in trouble. So I was gonna go on the other part because I called myself sneaking. And guess what I did? I got on the swings, because the swings wasn't on the sand part. So I got on the swings, and we used to do this thing called pumping, before everything became so sexually charged or whatever. We used to pump on the swings. That meant you can go real, real high, right? And so I got on the swings, and I was pumping on the swings, and the swings was wood. And so I was pumping on the swings, and I was going super high. And I didn't realize that somebody had broke the swing and put it back together. And, if you put wood back together, it'll sit, like it'll hold, for a minute. And remember, I was a kid, I was a fat kid, but I was a kid, so it held long enough for me to get on there. But I heard something say crack. And remember, I'm high in the sky. And by the time that mug slowed down, baby, okay, by the time that mug slowed down, that swing, I was holding on to the chains on the side because the swing was in two pieces. And my knees is what stopped me. So my knees was all scraped up because I told y'all that wasn't the sand side, that was the concrete side. So now I got to walk home, and I'm trying not to bend my knees because they hurt so bad. I got to walk home. Okay. And it wasn't far, but I had to walk home trying not to bend these knees. Them bugs on fire. Okay. And I got to get past my grandma and figure out what I'm going to put on these knees because they hurt. All because I didn't listen. All because I didn't listen. I'm sure you got multiple stories about how you did not listen. You didn't listen to what was wisdom because we didn't feel like it was wisdom because of who it came from. Or we didn't feel like it was wisdom because this person just always trying to stop us from having fun. Or we didn't feel like it was wisdom because we felt like they didn't know something. See, my grandma didn't know. My grandma did not know about playing on the playground because, see, my grandma was 50 when I was born. So in my mind, as a 6-year-old child, she's now 56. What does she know about the playground? I didn't know nothing about the Holy Spirit. and the Holy Spirit was a teacher of all things. I didn't know nothing about that. I didn't understand that she had this internal a connection with God to instruct us. So we have to be careful who we just discount. Who we just discount. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God. First of all, that sometimes means just under God. And then sometimes that means under who God sends you to serve under, or who he sends as an authority. Because that's still the hand of God. Because they're still answering to God. They're acting on behalf of God. I put a post up yesterday on Facebook that talked about how, if you're not going to, bow to your pastor, like what's the point? If you're not going to bow to your husband, what's the point? And somebody said, well, I got, I got a relationship with God myself. Of course we do. I didn't say blindly follow nobody. But why you keep picking men that you can't follow? Why you keep sitting up under pastors that you don't trust to lead you? And here's my thing. Oftentimes God has to send me to a church because I don't necessarily like the institution of church. I don't like what church has become, the building, right? And so when God sends me to a church, I'm usually there to help. Not to say that in a puffed up way at all, but I'm usually there with some instructions, like I'm there to help some way. No problem. And so even if I don't trust that leader, because that leader is a little cocked to the side, because there was a leader I was sitting under, and he was talking about how he don't apologize to his kids and all this type of stuff. And I was like, yeah, no. Yeah, no. And he said something about we need to blindly follow him. I ain't blindly following nobody. That is not a prerequisite of God. That is not a requirement, right? And so even though there were some things we vehemently disagreed on, I trusted that God had sent me there. So I couldn't just jump up and get mad because, he said one thing wrong, or jump up and get mad because he didn't do something that I like. No, I trusted God. The God that sent me there, I trusted the God who would release me when the time was right, and he did. So we have to learn what that looks like, to humble ourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt us in due time. We have to learn what that really looks like. It looks like sometimes us being quote unquote inconvenienced. Because I don't want to be here at this church. But he's saying sometimes it's not about what you're receiving all the time. Sometimes it's about what you're releasing in that place. So everything is not about us receiving all the time. Sometimes we always, well, what's in it for me? Sometimes it ain't nothing in it for you in that regard. Sometimes it's about what you're there to do, to, how you're there to help, how you're there to release. Not necessarily always how you're there to receive, but because we always looking to receive something all the time. And don't get me wrong, there's always a lesson and a blessing in it. So even if I'm there and I'm serving, I'm still going to get something. But if I don't change my perspective, I won't feel like I got anything, because I feel like all I was doing was pouring out, pouring out, pouring out. That's not a heart of humility. It's not a heart of humility to always look at what you're going to receive. What I'm going to get it. What's in it for me? They call it with them. What's in it for me? With them. WIIFM. What's in it for me? If that's your heart, you don't have a heart of repentance. I mean, a heart of humility. Okay. So we gotta understand what humbling ourselves under the mighty hand of God really looks like. It's all cute to say. We've said that scripture so many times. It's so cute to say, but what does that really look like? All right. Proverbs 22 and 4. Let me grab my phone for that one. I had the other ones written down, but I don't know how I missed that one. Proverbs 22 and 4. Pardon me, I thought I had that one written down. There's so many scriptures, y'all. I had so many scriptures written down. It's just so much to talk about on this topic, so I had to bring it in, honey. Had to bring it in. So Proverbs 22 and 4 says, by humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. My main part of that scripture that I really wanted to bring out was, by humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. By humility and fear of the Lord are life. It's life. Some of the humility that some of us don't understand that just being humble sometimes just keep you away from a lot of stress. Stress kill you. Some of us puffed up, mad, whatever you want to call it now, holding stress in our bodies because we mad at somebody or we don't like what they did, da 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 da. But humility says, Lord, I trust you to handle that. We'll talk about that a little later, but all right, I can't control everything. I told y'all in a series before that one of the best things that God did for me was allowing me not to feel like I had to control everybody and everything based on what I believe. So when I gave people the freedom, when my perspective changed and I gave people the freedom to do as they wish, you'll hear me all the time say, do what you want to, do what works for you and do what you want to be accountable for. And when I learned that, and I'm talking about internalize that, because I felt like I was everybody's life coach in the world. Okay. And this was even before I started coaching, because God was like, I cannot release you with this here, sister. But I felt like it was on me, it was incumbent upon me to speak on anything that I saw that was wrong in your life. Okay. Can you imagine how many arguments I was in? Because I was speaking out of turn. First of all, you don't even have I'm talking to the old me. I didn't even have a relationship with all those people to be able to say that. So we got to understand that whole each one, teach one. In between each and teaching is reaching, right? A lot of people don't understand that, especially with dealing with the youth nowadays. The youth nowadays, you can't just say anything to them. So back in the day, you could say anything to us and we'll just kind of look at you. We ain't gonna disrespect you, but we kind of like, hey, she crazy, and keep on moving. But nowadays, the kids nowadays are like, yeah, but I saw you at the club. Yeah, but I saw you smoking weed. Yeah, but I saw you doing it. So if it's so bad, why you do it? Right? I think somewhere in the Bible it says that the kids are born wiser. They will make much wiser. And it is not talking about with the wisdom of God. Not at all. They're you know what I'm saying? They come out with a way that seems right to man, and it is the way of death. And so we have to understand that, hey, humility keeps us away from a lot of mess. Oh, okay. That has become my response of choice. Oh, okay. Well, do what works for you then. And that I'll be done with it. So I had to learn to internalize that, so I wasn't arguing with everybody all the time. I mean, I was just fruitless and frivolous arguments all the time. Why? Because I felt the need. I felt like I was authorized to speak in the life of everybody. You know how puffed up and proud that is? To think you should be able to speak into everybody's life. I wasn't called to everybody. Humility lets me know that I ain't for everybody, and I'm okay with that. I don't use that as a token of or a tool not to change or an excuse not to change, but I understand that I'm not for everybody, and that helps me to release people so that they can go to who they're for. Humility only helped me do that, but God had to humble me in order for that to happen. Okay? So let's talk about what humility means. By definition, this is just a regular world definition. Humility is a modest or low view of one's own importance. Okay. All right. We could have, guessed that one. And humility also means the freedom from pride or arrogance. So that means that it's the opposite of pride or arrogance, right? Some synonyms for, humility: meekness, not weakness; meekness, not weakness; submissiveness. This is one of the reasons why we don't like humility, because we don't like being vulnerable. Because we've been vulnerable to the wrong people. So we were in the midst of pain. So let me tell you how this goes. We have some childhood trauma, right? And when we have childhood trauma, what we don't understand is it changes our view. It distorts our view, because if my mother did not do right by me, if my father abandoned me and rejected me, then what do I expect from others? The same thing or worse. And so now I go through life with a distorted view, thinking that everybody is out to get me. Everybody is. This is how narcissism is created. It is created from a depth of pain, of rejection and abandonment that causes a person to elevate themselves because nobody else did. Nobody else protected them. Nobody else, even if it's a perceived rejection, they will then elevate themselves and create such a grandiose portion of themselves. And now they start to believe it. And so now they sell themselves. They become the victim or the hero of every story. Understand this. If we are not careful, if God is not our anchor, we are all just one severe pain away from tilting to the other edge, other side, and becoming a narcissist. Let me tell you how I know this. I was friends with someone for over 20 years, and this person was dealt a devastating blow. Okay, a devastating blow. And because she didn't have the undergirding, because she didn't have enough word in her to help her rebound, she went to the other end of the spectrum and became a Jezebel. It can happen. Because as I've talked about in the previous series, if you did not watch it, go back and watch it, talking about Jezebel. We all have a little in us, because we're born in sin and shaped in iniquity. And so the truth of the matter is, it's not 0 to 100 when it comes to narcissism. If you go through those Jezebel, and I use Jezebel and narcissism interchangeably because they are the same. Okay. Jezebel is just assigned to the female, and narcissism is assigned to the man. That's it. But they are the same characteristics. But if you look at, if you look at the degrees of it, I talked about the degrees. Everybody's not oppressed. Some people are depressed. So sometimes you're depressed, sometimes you're oppressed, and then sometimes you're possessed. Now, the point of possession, that's the one where the demon takes over 100% of the time. Like, this person just is possessed with it. But then there are 2 other levels. And we don't talk about those levels because we know that sometimes we'll find ourselves right in them. So understand that one severe, blow, without enough word in you, without enough prayer partners and warriors around you, I'm telling you, it'll push you right over the edge, and you will become a full-fledged Jezebel. And people will be saying, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. She used to be so. I don't know what happened. He used to be so. I don't know what happened. Pain happened. Rejection happened. Perceived rejection happened. Okay? And so we have to understand that. Submissiveness, lowliness, not lowliness in appearance, not lowliness in character, not lowliness in, I can't ever, in my worth. No, lowliness in mind. You ain't puffed up in mind. You don't feel like you better than, I read I was listening to a message, and they quoted C.S. Lewis, and he said, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And then I heard T.D. Jakes say, humility is in the story that you tell yourself about yourself. This is the problem. Because remember, when a person is a narcissist or a Jezebel, guess what story they tell themselves? I'm great. I'm amazing. I'm awesome. I have no flaws. I'm not wrong. I'm right all the time. And when they tell themselves that leaves no room for a need for God. What do I need God for if I'm always right? What do I need God for if I'm amazing and great and I have no flaws and no failures? Because I can't possibly, if you ever paid attention and when you deal with a narcissist or a Jezebel, when you say anything that even feels like criticism of them, they attack. Why? Because it reminds them of the very thing that pushed them over the edge in the first place, the rejection and the hurt and the pain. So humility is in the story that we tell ourselves about ourselves, which means that's why we have to be careful. That's why we have to renew our minds, according to Romans 12. Renew our minds. Let this mind be in you. Think on these things. That's why the Bible talks about the mind so much, because if the mind tells you the wrong thing, now you are developing a whole story off of it. And guess what depends on your story? Your humility. Your humility. So let's talk about humility defined biblically. Okay, biblically. So biblically, humility is the sober assessment of oneself in comparison to God. Oh, that took it up a notch now, didn't it? A lowliness of mind due to an awe of God. That's from David Diga Hernandez, his teaching. The sober assessment of oneself in comparison to God. Oh, now it makes sense. Now it makes sense that I don't have to be low because I drive this car or that. No. It's not talking about that. You're not comparing yourself to people. When you look and see the awe of God, when you look and see the sovereignty of God, when you look and see God, you're like, I'm not there. I'm not there. And so let me know my place. Let me have a seat. Let me understand that I have some frailty here. Right? In comparison to God, in awe of God, not man, not other people. Humility is a selflessness to others on God's behalf. Humility is open acknowledgement of our continuous need for God due to an awareness of our own frailties. This ain't got nothing to do with nobody, with your worth in the world. Like, there are some people that are being taken advantage of and manipulated, and they think this is for part of humility. No, God is not creating us to be abused. Not by leadership, not by anybody. If he don't abuse us, what makes us think that he gonna sit us under a pastor to abuse us or anybody else to abuse us? No, humility is not weak. It is actually a strength, because when I understand that I have a continuous need for God, then it keeps me in the proper posture so I can fulfill that need. When I have a sober assessment of myself in comparison to God, it keeps me in my place. When I have the right mindset because of the awe of God, it helps me continue to go to God. So it's actually a strength. Here's what it's not. Humility is not a look. So it's not dressing poor. You can be bad. You can dress bad to the nines and still be humble. It's not a lack of authenticity. You ain't got to be somebody else. You can be 100% you and still be humble. It's not self-hatred and low self-esteem. It's not hanging your head low. It's your mind not being high. You ain't never heard of high-minded? It's your mind not being high, not your head. You can hold your head up. We think I got to hold my head low. I got to have low self-esteem. I can't. It's not a denial of your value, worth, or your abilities to the world, but it's you understanding where those things come from. My value, my worth, and my abilities are from God. Everything that I have is from him, for him. And I get the benefits. He gets the glory. I get the benefits. It is not shame, weakness, and humiliation. And it burdens me for many of us to think that we're in humility when the truth is we're in humiliation. God did not create us to be humiliated by leadership, to be humiliated by those that we serve, to be humiliated by those we're in authority with or under. That's not what humility is. So we have established the fact that pride is the opposite of humility. So you got one or the other, right? And don't get me wrong, there may be some areas of our lives that we struggle with a little bit here or there, but ultimately, overall, you either got one or the other. Like at the end of the day, you got humility or pride. Which one? And so when you look at your life, when you look at your everyday life, when you look at the things that you do, you say, you think, you feel, the way that you conduct yourself, your behavior, is it pride or is it humility? And we're going to talk about a few characteristics. It's not an all-inclusive list. Please know that, okay? Because this list could have been very long. But, and I told y'all, God sometimes will have me come right back on, like, I want you to say a few more things, so who knows? But anyway, pride is the root or at the root of all sin, okay? And as a result, where there is pride, there is no peace. You know why? Because the Bible says, pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. And so where there's pride, there's always strife and destruction. And if there's strife and destruction, there is no peace. And if there is no peace, there is no power. Uh-oh. Pride is not, humility is not thinking you're less than, but it's knowing that you're not more than. I'm not more than you. First of all, I'm not more than you, God. Okay. I know that I'm less than God, but it's not me thinking I'm more than others. And do you know how many people, because of the pain that they've endured, have created this grand version of themselves and hide behind religion, hide behind education? So they go get a whole bunch of degrees, and all of a sudden now their head is and their nose is in the air. You know why? Because they're covering up that pain. You cannot graduate in lieu of healing. Okay. You cannot become a deacon or become use your title in lieu of healing. You still got to heal. You still got to heal. But it's a whole lot of people in lieu of healing. They have gone on to do other things. Like, I'll get 50 degrees. I'll go and I'll go into the church, because the church is the one place that, especially for men, because there are so many women and not a lot of men. A man going to church and he's quote unquote faithful, and then all of a sudden they'll just push him right on up the ranks. He become a deacon, and now he's a minister, now he's a reverend, now he's a preacher, pastor, all of that. And the whole time he ain't never healed. But nobody checked that. We assume that because a person's in church, they're healed. No. You can't do anything in lieu of healing. You got to still go through the process. You still have to heal. No matter how many degrees you have, no matter how many promotions you get at work, you still got to heal. And then we'll understand, no matter how many degrees we have, no matter how many promotions we get at work, no matter what car we drive, no matter what our titles are, wherever, we'll understand that that does not make us more than. But we'll also understand that that does not make us less than. Humility helps us to have balance. It actually helps us to have balance. And so ultimately, humility is a manifestation of our trust in and dependency on God. But pride will take us further away from that. Pride says, I trust me. Humility says, I trust God. Pride says, I got this together. I got it together. I don't need no help. Humility says, I have frailties. I have, limitations. Lord, help me. Pride says, I'm not apologizing because I wasn't wrong. Humility says, I'll follow peace with all men. Okay, so that's kind of an overview of the difference between those two, and to help us better understand what we're walking in. What are we walking in? Pride says, I'm gonna get the last word, because you ain't finna say what you want to say to me. Humility says, I will go in peace, and I'll allow God to be my avenger. Okay. So let's talk about a few quick characteristics. Like I told you, this is not an all-inclusive list, not at all. Okay. There's so many other things that we could talk about concerning this. But we're going to talk about characteristics of humility. So first of all, having the proper perception. Having the proper perception is a major characteristic of humility, because those who are humble, they question their own perception and they don't automatically accept it as right. Ooh, ouch. They question their own perception and do not automatically accept it as right. See, sometimes we're too close to a situation to perceive it correctly. So understanding that and taking an approach to check yourself and your narrative is what the humble does, because I told you a little bit earlier that humility or pride is derived from the story that we tell ourselves about ourselves, right? And so if that's true, then sometimes you got to check yourself, because the mind is a perfect storyteller. I heard somebody say that, and I thought that was amazing. The mind is a perfect storyteller. It'll tell you the story that you want, you ready to hear. Oh, it'll tell you. If you do not renew your mind, it'll tell you that whole pitiful story. Because they did me like this, and You don't see no lesson, no blessing in nowhere. You are the victim. I'm the victim. But humility helps us to have a proper perception. When you are humble, you understand you don't know it all. When you are humble, you're like, you know what? Let me get some help in these areas. David was an amazing king, but he needed Nathan. The Bible tells us that Nathan was a court prophet in the time of King David. He was introduced in 2 Samuel 7:2. And First Chronicles 17:1, he was an advisor to David. It shows us that he was an advisor to David. Now, David is the king. He could have very well said, I don't need no advice. I don't need nobody telling me nothing. But if you would notice, many kings in the Bible, like, I need some advisors. I need a cabinet. I need somebody to help me. Why? Because they understood they did not know it all. And the ones who felt they did know it all and did not listen, we saw the destruction. King Nebuchadnezzar. We saw the destruction. Grazing grass. Losing your whole mind. We saw it. We saw it. Having the proper perception about things. And knowing that you don't, and knowing that you need to check your perception. That in and of itself is humility. Saying that, you know what, my perspective about this, my perception about this may be a little off. Let me check. Because I could be wrong. That's all it's saying. I could be wrong. Humility says I could be wrong, and I don't mind standing corrected. Proper perception. A proper view of others. Those who are humble have a proper view of others. They do not look down on others. As I said just a few minutes ago, we know that we are not less than, but we also know we are not more than. Those who are humble understand the mighty phrase, but for the grace of God, there go I. And when you remind yourself of that, when you're reminded of that in spirit, then it helps you and keeps you from judging others and looking down on others. Look at her over there with all them kids. But for the grace of God, there go I. Uh-oh. That made me stop and say, thank you, Lord, and I pray for her. Look at them over there doing this. Look at them over there doing that. But for the grace of God, there go I. It changes your perspective. Humility will help you have the proper view of others. It'll help you humility will keep you from comparing yourself to others. Let's start there. Because I told you it's a comparison to God, in awe of God. It's you understanding how frail you are in comparison to God, not people. It's helping us to understand God's the miraculous nature of God. It's helping us. Ain't got nothing to do with nobody else. And so it helps us keep our view of others in proper perspective, because the truth is we're going to look at other people, okay? But it keeps us from being sitting on that throne, sitting high and looking down low. That ain't your place. That ain't my place. That ain't our place. And so humility helps us to have a proper view of others. Humility also helps us to have a proper posture of accountability. Oh boy. Oh boy. Because people who are humble recognize, acknowledge, and take accountability for and accept the consequences for their mistakes. See, I can recognize something but not acknowledge it to you. Let me help you understand why I use all those words. I could recognize something but never acknowledge it to you or acknowledge it to anybody because I'm puffed up. I ain't finna let you know that I know. I ain't finna let you know. I ain't finna say it to you. I ain't finna say it in front of you. But see, humility recognizes, acknowledges it. They will openly say, I was wrong. See, sometimes a person will recognize they was wrong, but they ain't gonna say nothing. They ain't gonna say nothing. They ain't gonna apologize. I ain't gonna say nothing. I'm gonna just keep going. This is why there are some people who just come ask you want something to eat? Or come give you some money, or come do or just want to come back and start cracking jokes. We got to address that behavior. We got to address it so that this don't continue to happen, or we're going to have to make some hard decisions. We're going to have some hard conversations. So some people, they recognize that they were wrong, but they ain't going to come back and say, I apologize, or they're not going to come back and acknowledge their behavior because they're toxic. And so what they'll do is they'll just come back and basically start talking, No, we got to deal with this. It's okay to step away from a minute, for a minute and get yourself together. But when you come back, we got to deal with this because this can't continue to occur. And so there's a difference between recognizing and acknowledging. Trust me. Okay. So not only do the humble recognize it, they acknowledge it, and then they take accountability for it, saying, I did it and it was wrong. And then they accept the consequences, because here's the thing, taking accountability for it, saying, I apologize, I won't do it again. That does not mean that people will restore you all the time. And you got to accept that. We have to learn to accept the fact that somebody may forgive us, but not restore us. And just because they did not restore us does not mean that they did not forgive us. They don't have to consult us to forgive us. They don't have to consult us. Forgiveness can be something between them and God. And so we can say, I apologize, I didn't mean it. I'll never do it again. You can say all of that stuff, and that's great. And I accept your apology, and I believe you won't do it again. And part of the reason why I know you ain't finna do it again is because I'm not finna restore you to the place where you can. And if that happens, it doesn't mean that I didn't forgive you. It just means I choose to walk with you differently as we move forward. We're good at doing that, but we're not good at receiving that. But humility has the proper posture of accountability, even if it means that the person chooses not to walk with us that way in the future. And if they choose not to walk with us that way in the future, humility does not go talk about them to everybody. Humility does not go and tell them that, yeah, they ain't forgive me because they. No, humility accepts it as part of their consequences and moves on with the lesson so that they don't do that again. Okay. Humility, they don't shift blame even when they could. And this is, we see this even, with childhood trauma. I could very well say, it's my mama's fault that this happened, it's my daddy's fault that this happened. But at some point, we all come up under the knowledge of right. And I know that because God would not charge us with doing right if he did not give us the knowledge of right. So at some point, while we could shift, very well shift blame, in terms of our childhood and all of that, at some point, because we was not the cause, does not mean that we cannot take part in the cure. And so at some point, we have to say, you know what? I could very well blame them, but humility says, you know what? And I often say this to you. I'm telling you this. Sometimes we don't forgive our parents until we become a parent that needs forgiveness. Why? Because we shifted blame to them, and then one day we realize, somebody could shift some blame to us. And so the humble does not shift blame even when they could, because they see it as an opportunity for growth and development. For growth and development. An opportunity to, what is there to learn from this? That's the proper posture of accountability. What is there to learn from this? Not just so I don't repeat this again, but maybe because I can prevent others from not repeating this or not doing this at all. That's what humility says. Okay? Humility has the proper posture of limitations. They acknowledge that they have a deficit and they ask for help. But it goes a step further. When they ask for help, they don't try to dictate how you help them. They just tell you, this is what I need. And then they allow you to, do the thing in the way that it needs to be done or whatever, but not always trying to micromanage. Humility does not micromanage. Pride does. Because the reason why humility micromanages is because humility feel like they really are the ones that can do it the best. Or they don't trust nobody. So the truth of the matter is, when we try to do everything ourselves, including micromanagement, either it is a defense mechanism from childhood trauma because, one, nobody ever helped, protected, or covered us. So we do not know how to allow others to help us, and, not always, try to dictate how they do it. And when I say how, I'm talking about methods. So we over their shoulder trying to tell them exactly how to help us, what to do. That was me, y'all. Ooh-wee. I tell people I need them to come help me. First of all, especially if it was physical. If it was, I need y'all to help me move. I didn't mean that. I need y'all to pack up all this stuff for me. That's really what I needed to say. Because I wasn't planning on taking part in it. Or if I did, I was just going to tell y'all what to do. Okay? Because, I just needed to come on, be honest. One day, my family just called me on out. Because I said, I need y'all to help me move. They said, help. I was good for that. And I need y'all to help me put the Christmas tree up. I ain't touched a limb yet. I ain't touched a limb yet. I went to get pizza. I'm just telling y'all the truth about me. I'm just, listen, transparency sometimes is the best teacher. Okay? I went and got pizza while they put the Christmas tree up. But I said they was helping me. Helping me? Help me. You already doing something. I come and I aid you as you doing that thing. I wasn't touching a limb. I ain't touched a limb or a box yet. So we got to understand that. And then I tried to tell them how to do it. Well, now look. Let me do this. If you came to me for help, you got to trust that I know what I'm doing. Let me do this. But listen, right now today, 57% of people leave their jobs, not jobs that they hate, but jobs that they love because of people that they can't stand. Why? Micromanagement is the number one reason. You hovering all up over me because you got trust issues. That's really what it comes down to. Because again, either it's a defense mechanism from childhood because nobody ever helped or protected or covered you. And so as a result, now you just don't trust nobody to do nothing. Or it's because they want to take all the credit themselves and they think everybody else is incapable. So they're looking down on others. Either way, it's the improper posture. But the proper posture of limitation says, I don't know everything. So God, you help me. You give me a team of people and I'm going to trust who you sent me. I'm going to trust that you sent me. That's just like marriage. Marriage. After you've been hurt so many times, you be like, I'm done. And God said, no, I'm going to send you somebody. You're not trusting that person. You trusting that God will not send you somebody who would devastate you, hurt you, tear you up, take it down. Now, don't get me wrong. They're going to disappoint you because we're human. We're human. But God's going to send you what you need. He's a good God. He's a good father. He said, I will withhold no good thing from you. So how is the God that says he'll withhold no good thing from you going to send you Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? That was your choice. That's who you picked. That wasn't who God sent. That was who you picked. So we got to understand we have to have the proper posture of limitations first before God, and then ask him to send us to those who can help us, or send them to us who can help us, because purpose is always bigger than us. It always requires the help of others. So we have to learn how to allow others to help us. Trust me, I'm talking to myself. Because do you understand? I'll try to do everything myself, not because I feel like I'm the only one that can do it right, but because people have dropped the ball so many times and failed me so many times that I just assume, like, let me just do it myself. Let me just do it myself. But that's a defense mechanism. Once again, I got to trust who God sends to do what God tells them to do. And sometimes the way God tells them to do it. It may not be the way that God would have told me to do it. I got to trust the God in him, or the God in that process. See, I don't trust the process. I trust the God of the process. To me, trusting the process is like trusting the universe. No, I don't trust the universe. I trust the God that created the universe. I don't trust the process. I trust the God that created the process. Okay, so we have to have the proper posture of limitations. We don't have it all. We don't know it all. And we weren't created to. We weren't created to. Okay. We also have to have the proper posture on rejection, and humility helps us to have that. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But then we also have to have the proper posture on vengeance. This is the big one right here. Humility has the proper posture on vengeance. This right here is what saves us a lot of stress. This right here is what helps us to walk away from a lot. This right here is that life part in that scripture I read earlier. Life, riches and honor, and life. This right here is a big part of that. Having the proper posture on vengeance, because people are surely going to offend thee. People are surely going to betray thee. People are surely, because the Bible said they did it to Jesus. Why we think they not going to do it to us? Okay? If they rejected him, if they betrayed him, why do we think they're not going to do it to us? And so we got to have the proper posture on vengeance, or we will start to carry that unforgiveness in our hearts, in our bodies, in our minds, and then it drives us further and further and further and further away from God. Because the more you start to avenge yourself, the more you're delving into pride. And the more you delve into pride, the Bible says he resisted the pride. He resists the pride. He resists. What does resist mean? Let's look at what resist means, so we can really understand what this is saying, because some people don't think it really means what it says. It says withstand the action or effect of. Refrain from doing or having. So God resists. He refrains from doing or having you when you are proud. That's what he resists the pride. He refrains from having you. Refrain from doing or having. That means he refrains from doing anything for or having anything with. So we have to have the proper posture on vengeance, and it goes back to that one overview point that I had. Humility is a manifestation of our trust in God and dependency on God to be what we're not, to develop and equip us, to vindicate us, to direct and correct us. At the end of the day, we have to trust God will avenge us. Let me tell you something. This past week, we had to have an all employees meeting at my job. I think that's what they do as a Christmas party and don't tell us. Like, we got this one meeting we go to and we listen to the CEO just kind of talk about himself, and they feed us and then they tell us, thank you for coming. And I'm like, I think this is in lieu of a Christmas party, but okay, a holiday party, whatever you want to call it. And I saw for the first time since 2019. So since December of 2019, for the first time, other than one time I saw her passing in a car, I saw the person who had offended me at work. And when I say offended me, I'm talking about really had tore my character down. When she could not control me, she controlled how others saw me. It was just crazy. And don't get me wrong, there were some things I could have handled differently too, but this person openly disrespected me. I'm talking about yelled and pointed at me, and I'm an adult and I'm a year older than her. And that's not to say, age has anything to do with the level of respect, but it's like, excuse me, I'm good and grown. And so they pegged me the problem. They said I was a problem because of the authority that she had and all of that. But then later on, over the last couple of years, since 2019, she hasn't been able to really work with anybody. So she's really like gotten rid of her whole staff because she can't work with people. And so finally management kind of recognized that, she was the problem. They started sending her like counseling and stuff, like sending her to, making her read books and sending her to seminars and stuff for her attitude and everything. But of course, nobody came back and told me I apologize, or maybe it wasn't you, or no, they didn't. And so God said, I want to see, what does your humility look like, Zakiya? Because this past Wednesday was the first time that I actually saw her outside of, like I said, passing in a car. And she didn't see me when we passed in the car that I know of. God said, what are you going to do? And let me tell you what I did. When I first came in, I just kind of avoided eye contact. I just avoided her because I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Okay. I don't know what I'm going to do or what I'm going to say to her. I don't know. So I needed a minute. I came in, I was talking to, I talked to a lot of people, and then when it was time to go, God said, I want to see what you're going to do. And as I was walking out, and I was one of the last couple people to leave, she was still sitting there. And I turned to her and she looked at me and I waved and smiled. And let me tell y'all something. I wanted to do a cartwheel. If I thought my arms could hold me up, okay, I probably wouldn't have did a cartwheel. But anyway, I wanted to do, I just want to do flips. I was so excited that I passed the test because there was once upon a time that I wouldn't have. And there was some tests I haven't passed. But do you understand? To have the proper posture on vengeance, for me to smile and wave at her, was to say, I release you. Whatever God want to do to you, that's between you and him. But I release you from me. There's some people we need to release, whether it's us, release them with forgiveness. And that's what we need to release them with, forgiveness. Hey, I forgive you and I wish you well. Forgiveness is two-part. We're going to talk about that. Forgiveness is two-part. It's not just saying, I forgive you, but it's also wishing them well. I wish you well. Go ahead. I had another opportunity with the same person under oath. They asked me about her character. They asked me about her work ethic. They asked me about her. I had a chance to tear her name up like she tore mine up. I told the truth, word for word. Once again, I showed God. I'm putting it in your hands. So humility simply helps us to transfer who gets the vengeance. It doesn't take it away. It just simply says, God, I trust you to deal with this situation because you're better at it than me. Because once again, I have a proper posture on my limitations. My limitations is going to land me in jail. Okay? In the big house. Okay? So therefore, Lord, I have a proper posture on. Let me have a proper posture on my limitations. Let me have a proper posture on vengeance. And let me put this in your hand. Because you better at it than me. You a better leader than I am follower. So let me put this in your hand. Okay. Let's talk quickly, very quickly about why is humility a weapon? Why is it a weapon then? Because some people say, that's weakness. No, it's not. Well, humility is a weapon because it keeps us in the posture of a grateful heart. It keeps us in the posture of a grateful heart. At the core of humility is thankfulness. Thanksgiving. That's what I'm trying to say. Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is the root of humility. See, we become humble when we start to realize, right? And we realize through Thanksgiving, we start to realize, oh Lord, what you've delivered me from. Oh Lord, what you've blessed me with. Oh Lord, so when we start to look at him and the magnitude of God, when we start to look at the magnitude of the things he's done in our lives, we're thankful. And when we're thankful, we're soon humble. The Bible says, enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. And so humility keeps us saturated with an attitude of gratitude, which postures us for God to do more. Because what father do you know that won't do more if you say thank you for what he's done already? Humility helps us receive entry. Because he said, enter into his gates with thanksgiving. Well, if thanksgiving is the root and thanksgiving is the heart posture that I have because I have humility, then guess what? It always allows me to enter into those gates. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving. Some of us keep trying to enter into his gates with the wrong heart posture. And he's like, denied, denied, denied. I heard a man talking about no access, no honor, no access. Well, some of us need to honor God. Humility helps us to honor God. But we want total access to God, but we don't honor him. No. But yet let somebody not honor us. We deny, we cutting people off. I'm cutting them off. It's almost January 1st. It's the time everybody cutting everybody off. Why you got to cut people off every year? You keep attracting foul folks. Why? It's something foul in you that they connect to. But humility keeps us in a posture of a grateful heart. Why? Because we understand that without God, we can do nothing. Remember the awe of God. Remember the awe of God. The sober assessment of oneself in comparison to God. The lowliness of mind due to in awe of God. Selfless to others on his behalf. An acknowledgement of our continuous need for him. An awareness through actions of our frailties. That's what humility is. The Bible says he that comes must acknowledge that he is, and he's a rewarder that diligently seeks him. So we have to acknowledge when we come to him. It helps us to have a grateful heart or the proper heart in how to come to him. Some of us don't know how to go to God. That's why we don't get what we want. Now, sometimes we don't get what we want because it ain't time. Sometimes we don't get what we want because it ain't his will. But sometimes we don't get what we want because of our own heart posture. Humility is a major key in the correct posture of coming to God. Because even when we come boldly to the throne of grace, we do not come with a sense of entitlement. We come warring with the word against the kingdom of darkness, not warring with or against God. Let me find the scripture that talks about coming like a child. And this is the NIV version. Matthew 18 is where it says, and he said, I tell you the truth, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes a little child like this in my name welcomes me. He said, come to me like a child. Guess what a child know? A child like, I don't know. A kid will tell you in a minute, I don't know. I don't know. They know what they don't know. I don't know. Kid gonna tell you straight up what they want. I want some candy. Why you want some candy? I don't know. They ain't gonna try to make up because I am very intelligent. Nope. Kids like, I don't know. Keeps us in the posture of a grateful heart. Come like a child. Helps us to know how to come to God. Helps us to remain dependent on God as the vine. When we remember that we're a branch. It helps us to know our place with God and in God. Because some people are way too common with God and some are way too low to the point where they're being manipulated in ministries all over the world. Humility gives us balance. It keeps our heart postured properly. Humility is also a weapon because it keeps us in the posture of promotion. Promotion comes from God. In order to come to God, we have to be humble, first of all. So first of all, humility helps us to get in the gate. Once we're in the gate, then we're able to say, okay, Lord, here's what I believe, I like, and I've done this and done that or whatever. But what does he say? He says he resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Oh. And then Luke 14:11 says, for whosoever exalts himself shall be abased, and he that humbles himself shall be exalted. Oh. So that's how we get promotion. Oh, okay. God may humble yourself, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. Oh, there's that exalt word again. Matthew 23:12 says, and whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. Once again. And so humility keeps us in the posture of promotion because God says, I'll promote you. I'll promote you. I'll exalt you. In due time, I'll exalt you. Why? Because you were humble enough to admit your limitations. You were humble enough to accept accountability. You were humble enough to understand the lesson and the blessing and the things that you've done wrong. You were humble enough. And so because you were humble enough and you were teachable, you were humble enough and you were coachable, you were humble enough and you acquiesced to the Spirit of God. Oh, okay, well, now I can work with you. Now I can develop you. I can put the things in you that you'll need at the next level. But if you're full of pride, I got to resist you. Why? Because you're not going to go out here and tear up people. See, when I was out here telling everybody what they needed, according to me, when I was out here feeling like I needed to be everybody's life coach in the world, God said, I can't exalt you. He had to take me through a 4-year process. And I'm not saying that your process got to be that long, but he had to take me through a process from 2012 to 2016. You know why? Because guess what? I got to humble you. I got to humble you and I got to help you and I got to teach you so that you are humble enough to be able to speak over the lives of others, so that you're humble enough to accept the rejection and not pop off, go off and act a fool and cut up. I got to help you heal. I got to heal you so that when somebody rejects you, you understand that it's not really you that they're rejecting. They're really rejecting me. You can tell a lot about a person and how healed they are by how they accept the word no, by how they accept disagreement. You can tell. If they immediately feel attacked and want to defend themselves, you got some healing to do. And when you know that you have some healing to do, then you understand when God ain't promoted you. See how this works? It keeps us in a posture of promotion because God can heal us. It keeps us in a posture of promotion because God then can develop us and grow us through our mistakes and experiences, and even the experiences of others. And so once we're in that posture of promotion, when we don't get the promotion, we still understand that it's some more growing and developing that we got to do. So Lord, develop me, prepare me. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. We sing all this stuff, but we don't believe it. We don't believe it. And with thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary, Lord, for you. Oh, we don't believe it though. But humility keeps us in a posture of promotion. It allows God to pour into us. It allows God to have those hard conversations with us. It allows him to correct and direct us so that we're ready for the next lesson. So that we're ready for the next level. Humility is a weapon because it protects us from public humiliation. See, here's the thing. God will talk with us first. The Bible said, humble yourself under the mighty hand of God. God will deal with you first, publicly. Privately. So he'll tell you privately, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't go there. Don't do that. He might even tell you a couple times. God had me to deliver a word to somebody last April. Not this April, the past, last April. He had me to deliver a word to somebody. And I delivered the word to him. And then God gave that person 3 months. He gave him 3 months to get it right. God is merciful. So, he'll, and the thing is, we don't know how long the grace and the long suffering lasts. So it's like, don't try him, okay? Don't try him. There's strength in the struggle, though. There is strength in the struggle. So if he see you trying, then I believe that okay, all right, long as it's some progress, because God is a God of progress and process. You're going to see some progress in the process. Otherwise, God is not in that. So if you don't see nothing progressing, God has left the building, okay? And so, I told this person, and then all of a sudden, 3 months later, all hell started to break loose in the person's life. God said, you won't listen? All right, let's turn up the heat. Let's turn up the heat. But he tried to deal with the person privately first. And he gives us that. He gives us that. He deals with us privately first. He gives us a chance to humble ourselves under the mighty hand of God, under his mighty hand first. Then he says, okay, now I'm going to publicly expose you. And we get ready to see, the exposure of the things that God has been dealing with people with. I mean, these people who got big platforms, we going to see some exposures. I'm not just talking about in the world. I'm talking about exposures in the kingdom of people who he has been long suffering with. Don't let it be you. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying not to let it be me. Lord, what you want me to do? Okay, I'm all right. But humility protects us from public humiliation. You either be humble, or be humbled. It's our choice. It's between you and him before you're exposed in front of them. Okay? And so humility allows us to properly handle rejection. When we're in a posture of promotion, for instance, let's use that for instance, and I'm talking about whether it's promotion at your job or in life or whatever. When you get passed over, it's easy for you to say, I deserve that. I deserve that more than them. I deserve that. This, da, 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 da. When somebody who you felt should have loved you rejects you, I should have been their wife. That I should have been this. That it's easy to say that because you know how you would have loved that person, or you know how you would have served in that position. However, once again, remember what we talked about before, that those who are humble often run their perception by others, right? Because sometimes you think a little more highly. I think a little more highly. We think a little more highly than we should about ourselves. We feel like I could have loved that person better. And God said, you think you love them better than I do? Because that was a choice I allowed. And so you don't love them and never will love them better or more than I do. And if this is a God call, then you got to know that I know what's best for you and I know what's best for them. In 2002, when my first, real love, my ex hurt my feelings, it devastated me so bad. It devastated me so badly. And I didn't have the humility. I wasn't taught like this. So I didn't have the humility to properly handle the rejection. So in my mind, who better to love him than me? God like me. and even better, God was like, I love you. I love you more than to let you stay with him. because I know what I invested in you. See, sometimes we thinking, I can't nobody love them better than me, but what about how they love you? Now, standing on the other end of this thing 20 years later, I realized that God was protecting me, because that person never had what it took to love me the way that God. Let me tell you something. When it comes to love and relationships, let me tell you, my prayer is, Lord, I want a physical manifestation of your love for me through a person, through that man that you send me. He didn't have that. And he wasn't interested in that. Sometimes a person just can't see, they can't see you that way. Because I was responsible, because I was this and that, he couldn't see me as somebody he could take care of. So he would never to love me that way. He just couldn't see me as, he saw me as being above him. So he could not see that. That's why we have to be careful not to mother our men. We have to be careful not to mother them. Because once we mother them, then they feel like, I got to go off and find me a wife, because you can never be my wife because you were my mother. We have to be careful not to build men. We can build them up, but not build them. Because once we build them and mother them, they got to go off and find a wife, because this is how we prepare them for another woman. Because once you mother them and build them, they got to go off and find a wife, because they can never be better than the one who built them. So humility helps us to properly handle rejection. It helps us to say, Lord, just like vengeance, just like we say, Lord, I trust you with vengeance. Lord, I trust you with this rejection. I trust that you know what's best for me. I trust that if you said no here, that the yes is going to be amazing. Does it hurt? Yeah. But having this humility keeps us from narcissism. It keeps us from being on the other edge of things. It says, Lord, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for loving me enough to disconnect me from somebody who's disconnected from you. But we don't see it that way at the time. Why? Because our perception is off. And because we don't have anybody in our circle that helps us to tweak our perception. But see, humility surrounds itself with people that can keep their perception grounded and perspectives grounded. And so when you're spiraling, then that person can come and speak life into you, and you'll be open to hear. But see, if you're not open, if you're in pride, can't nobody love him better than me? Oh, okay. God, like, well, I'm gonna leave you to it. And then you're going to wrestle with that thing for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. And you're going to waste a lot of time, and time is life. We could have moved on. Now, nothing is wasted with God per se. However, we could have moved on from this, but you were struggling and wrestling with it because you felt you knew better than God. Humility is a weapon because it allows us to appreciate, receive, and apply course correction in God's direction. It allows us to appreciate, receive it, and apply it. I appreciate it. Thank you, Lord. Remember, enter into his gates with thanksgiving. So I appreciate it. I receive it, meaning I internalize it. And now I'm going to apply it to my life. Because wisdom is the application of knowledge. We got a whole lot of knowledge at our fingertips, but we don't know what to do with it. But I appreciate it. I receive it. I internalize it for myself. Because see, I can appreciate a whole bunch of stuff, but it ain't for me. But no, I appreciate it. I receive it for me. And then I seek to apply it in my life. What am I applying? His course correction and his direction, which sometimes looks like rejection, which sometimes is rejection. But I see it differently. I see it differently. Okay. So we're going to stop at this time for questions. We'll stop the recording.